One time I did a room full of German tourists, and I sang every single German tourist song I knew. Ach du lieber Augustin, and my hat, it has three corners, and all that crap. And it worked. They just love that stuff if you pander to their basest expectations. Hi, I'm the wrong hero, but you can call me Rebel Without Applause, which is also the name of this segment. Oh, thank you, you're too kind. You know, you're a great audience. Let's hear it for you. Yay! Yay! Yeah! Yeah! Yes, yes, indeed. Oh, you must be the famous crowd I've heard so much about. You know, you're not as big as you look on television. You know, my kid writes funnier jokes than you. I got this blank check. Would you autograph it for me? Yeah, well. You know, I don't have to talk to you. I once played to a crowd of 4,000. Okay, it was an anthill, but still, 4,000. I'm the wrong hero. And I'm a symbolist, but I also beat the drums. Now, I realize that a lot of these things I'm about to say are going to be highly controversial, and perhaps by the end of my show you will hate me for saying them. But keep in mind just one simple fact. I don't care. Because I'm the wrong hero. I don't believe in situation ethics. I believe in situationist ethics. Whenever I encounter a moral dilemma, I spray paint an absurdist slogan over it. Just like a lot of journalists, as a matter of fact. And my motto is, flake off, human dandruff. I'm a nonviolent hypocrite. You believe me, don't you? Or do you want a little trouble? Whenever I get into a fight, I have 4 simple words which always stops the fight, right then and there. And they are, Ixnay, I'm a bleeder. And it works. Yes, well, I'm the wrong hero. I don't go in for cheap nihilism. I go in for the expensive kind, like the kind you get at Tiffany's. You hear about that bank robbery at Tiffany's? It was an inside job. How could they tell? Because they sold the jewelry in Harlem for $300, right? I mean, if these were professional criminals, they would have gone to Amsterdam, taken the diamonds out of their settings, given it to a little man with an eyepiece permanently affixed to his head, and sold them for hundreds of thousands of dollars. But no, they lived in New York City, they didn't feel like going to Amsterdam, so they went up the street to a little place in Harlem, a hawk shop, and they sold jewelry worth thousands of dollars for $300, and they tracked every last one of them down and caught them. So, anyway, that was a bit of contemporaneous humor. June 11th was National Sense of Smell Day. You know what I think about that? I think that stinks. And I'll tell you something else too. March was National Trauma Awareness Month. But I was too frightened to talk about it until now. That reminds me of a tedious story. It's a false story based on untrue events which never happened. One time, the beloved comedian Red Skelton got on stage and said, "You are helplessly in my grasp, Captain America! With the power of the cosmic June, I will dominate the universe!" Actually, I guess that was the Red Skull who said that. I forget what Red Skelton said. Well, I'm glad you're all here because now it's time for the Wrong Heroes Almanac. My predictions for 1995. There will be a bumper crop of asphalt. Chewing tobacco between baby's toes soothes teething pain. stand the heat, stay away from the sun. Oh, and remember too, Nicaraguan coffee is good to the last coup. Get it? Critics. I have a few words to say about critics. Critics long for everything to suck so they can be witty at the expense of what they criticize. Notice this? It's like reviewing the Flintstones. Isn't that sort of like shooting at fish in a barrel? Isn't that sort of like dropping an atomic bomb on a goldfish bowl? You know? Well, here's how the critic game works. A pat on the back for your cronies, a kick in the ass for the beloved mother-father figure, and a cock of the snoot for those with whom you have the confidence to differ. Usually has-beens or never-wasers, with no podium of their own to fling filth at their betters. How do I know all this? I'm a critic too. I wrote the book. It's called How I Done It. Now there's all those television shows that are becoming movie projects, like American Gladiators. What's the plot? Yeah, American Gladiators. What's the plot line going to be? You know, it's like, he broke my toy, I'll kill. Yeah, that's what. Or Bewitched. They're going to make a movie of Bewitched. What I'd like to talk about briefly is the intrinsic appeal of these television shows in the first place, and the difficulty of translating that appeal to the big screen. You know, these are shows that ran for over 100 episodes. They are actually 25-hour serial type things, you know, projects. If you got all of them back to back, it would take like 25, 30, 40 hours to watch them. They're going to condense all this down to a movie that's going to run 2 hours tops. Bewitched. What is Bewitched about except the magical power of advertising to fetishize commodities, and the equally magic power of a witch to counter this magical power of advertising, because her father is, in fact, her husband is an ad executive. And the only thing more powerful in advertising is witchcraft. That's the basic hidden message of the show. And they're going to make a movie of Sergeant Bilko. And I guess Sergeant Bilko is a metaphor for how the military swindles the United States government, and how people in their turn, while pretending to revere the military, swindle it by selling it parts at incredibly exorbitant fees. You know, it's all like, God damn it, I'm a patriot. I don't think that Haitian invasion is a good idea, but if President Clinton does send one soldier over there, I'm going to stand behind him 100%, because I am a military contractor. Now, I really love this country, but I will sell you a toilet seat for $600. So, and Hogan's Heroes. You know, Hogan's Heroes, they're going to make a movie of this. I think Hogan's Heroes, it would be a lot funnier if, in fact, Hitler had actually lost. You think Hitler lost, don't you? That's what they tell you.
Yeah, here.
Well, that's true. You're here. But, and Mission Impossible. You know what Mission Impossible, you know what's impossible about Mission Impossible? Persuading third world countries that sending our spies over there is going to do them any good whatsoever. That's what the whole show's about. Sending spies to foreign countries and screwing up their internal affairs, and then coming home at the end of the 2-hour episode and saying, well, we did it, we're Americans, they're just a bunch of third world people. Father knows best. Now, if they said it in Jerusalem in the year 30, then it could be about Jesus. Father knows best, you know. Maybe. Oh, and the Brady Bunch? It's going to take at least 2 hours to explain how they can live like millionaires on an architect's salary. Of course, you know, you've thought of this before, right? The guy doesn't even subscribe to Architectural Digest. He's like a fucking, you know, what is this guy, Caporcier or something? You know, I don't know, I just don't get it, you know. They have a maid. When's the last time you saw an architect who had a maid? You know, and can support 6 hungry pre- and post-adolescents? I don't know. And they're going to update it though for the 90s, you know. Greg's going to be caught smoking crack in the park, and Marcia's going to rat him out. And so that's how it's going to work. Gentle Ben. should mix Gentle Ben and Spider-Man. They could call it Spider Bear. When his uncle, Gentle Ben, was killed by a hunter, the little bear cub became Spider Bear. No? Alright, never mind. I'll drop it. Gilligan's Island. They're going to make a movie of this, too. I'm just like bringing these up, okay? I promise not to tell jokes about the ones I don't have jokes for. But I just want to tell you, like Gomer Pyle, they figured Forrest Gump made a big hit. Might as well make a movie of Gomer Pyle, too. Forrest Gump's even stupider younger brother, you know? It's like, golly, Sergeant Carter, I got filth under my fingernails from last week. Do you think I can marry Miss Bunny? You know, that's Lost in Space.
There's too many people in the world! Too many people!
That's true. As my good friend, what's his name? The unforgettable, what's his name? No, not him. Instant Folk Death. They had this song. People been living on this planet for too long. We gotta kill everyone. He's a great guy. I wish you were here, but he's in Pittsburgh, and it's raining. Lost in Space. Who are they going to get to replace Dr. Smith? You know, oh, you cantankerous concatenation of nuts, bolts, and flywheels. You know, the guy was just the greatest, and how are they going to replace him? Dragnet. They made a movie of that a while back. I think that's what started this whole trend. Dragnet, the movie. You know, it's like affectless policeman. It's the affectless policeman hour. We just invaded Haiti. Who cares? The Untouchables. Dragnet?
Yeah.
I smoked marijuana and the baby drowned in the bathtub. Yeah, that's a great fucking show. I love that.
It was the most entertaining show ever made.
It was just a goddamn radio show with pictures, you know? It was like Friday, 6 a.m. I carry a badge. I mean, the whole thing, you know? It's like one little cute, charming, little, adorable, eccentric person after another, with occasionally a real bad guy. My name is Mr. James Cedric. You know?
They didn't waste time on details. They knew how to move the plot along so quickly. You know?
Yeah, I know. 23 minutes, not including commercials. And, yeah. All right. Lassie. They made a movie of Lassie. I don't know if it's come out yet. Probably has and is gone, but by this time anyway. But how is it that an animal with a brain pan the size of a Nerf ball somehow knows more than everybody else on the face of the planet? The kitten fell down the well. Whoa, whoa. What are you trying to tell us, Lassie? You know, it's like Jessica McClure fell down the well. Whoa, whoa. What's that, Lassie? Drill a shaft parallel to the shaft that she fell down and rescue her? Right away. Dennis the Menace. Did you see that one? No. Well, you didn't miss much. Basically, there was this hobo out of the Depression 30s who menaces the small community until he receives his comeuppance at the hands of Dennis the Menace. And Mr. Wilson is the subplot. This cantankerous old man has decided that perhaps it's time for him to die until he meets the charming 6-year-old Dennis. Then he decides it's time for him to kill. You know, I mean, because Dennis the Menace is really just a switch on the man upstairs motif, which is basically the honeymooners are on a train trying to fuck in the lower bunk. There's a man upstairs who represents their father who keeps on interfering with their sexual intercourse. Well, Dennis the Menace is the man downstairs. There's an elderly couple beyond the age of childbearing who are constantly having their most intimate moments squelched by a 6-year-old. You know, and that's the whole deal with that. Oh, and The Fugitive, you know, that was very popular, but they could have shortened it. They could have made it half an hour long. It's like he's standing at the culvert about to jump into the waterfall. I didn't kill my wife. I don't care. Fuck you! You know, the end. They could have just like wrapped that one right up. Why don't they make movies out of the really good television shows? Like Land of the Giants, or My Little Margie, or Bachelor Father, or The Lucy Show, or Mr. Ed.
Or the new people.
The new people. There you go. They could be the nude people, and it could be PC-18, you know, maybe like XXX. My Mother the Car, or The Herculoids. I'd love to see a 2-hour feature of The Herculoids. You don't remember The Herculoids, do you? And it's like every episode, there was like this evil alien that looked like a giant grasshopper circling the Herculoids' home planet, in a rocket and going,
soon the Herculoids will be destroyed, and the planet will be ours.
and the big boss insect would go,
Excellent.
you know, it's same deal. And it was just so comforting. Because, you know, when I was growing up as a kid, the television was, for me, like for a lot of us, my best friend. You know, I mean, Batman was more reliable than my father, you know? I mean, he was on twice a week, and I was lucky if my dad showed up like for half an hour on Saturday, half an hour late to boot. I'd count the cars going by, at the end of half an hour. Well, that's 213 cars going that way, and 33 cars going that way. Well, they're gonna have a lot of catching up to do if they want to catch up to those cars in the other lane. So, good old dad shows up, you know, and it's a pity that he didn't actually have any really insightful things to tell me, like, how's come I'm not here most of the time? No, you give me advice, you know, he'd say, you know, kid, money isn't everything. And I said, if money isn't everything, then why don't you give me some? And he'd go, well, money doesn't grow on trees, you know. And I'd say to him, I know money doesn't grow on trees. It falls from your fat wallet, fool! Now fork it over. Pronto. Habla Espanol. Papi. And let's see. He'd say all these wise sayings that he must have gotten out of some book somewhere. You know, I've never seen him crack a book open in his life. Like, well, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Great. Let's go into business, Dad. Catching flies. We'll call ourselves Flycatcher and Son Incorporated. Or, you know, advice about women. Don't you hate it when your father gives you advice about women? And it's like, geez, Dad, I'm kind of sick to my stomach. And it's like, why buy a cow if milk is cheap? Why buy anything if you're sturdy enough to beg? You know, build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a path to your home. Wouldn't it be cheaper to get construction workers to do it? You know? And you work in a restaurant, you'll never go hungry. That was pretty good advice, actually. What if I work in a coffee house? Will I always be nervous?
Or a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, what if I work in a pharmaceutical company? Marshmallow! Will I always be crazy? What if I work in a madhouse, Dad? Oh, never mind. Living here. That's cool.
Well, do the impression of a guy working at a cough syrup company.
Cough syrup company, huh? It's like, yeah. Hi, I'm Joey Ramone, here for Robitussin. Well, and you know, the thing is about coffee, I don't like coffee. I don't need coffee. I already have a bitter taste in my mouth first thing in the morning. I don't need coffee, okay? Like my dad, he'd say something like, son, stay in school and get yourself an education, because I don't want you around here. You know, it's real cool, real cool.
Francis, you should develop that coffee joke.
Yeah, I will. Anytime you say. Right here, buddy, right here. Well, so I got to liking school a lot, but then that was before I realized that elementary school is a hospital where they amputate your imagination. Oh, you know that one, Phil, huh? All right, now it's time to get to the cheerful stuff, the good jokes. Like, you ever hear this magazine called Final Frontier magazine? Me neither, not until like 2 days ago. They have a contest to rename the moon. Now what's wrong with the name it already has, which I believe is Luna, right? But no, they can't leave well enough alone. They got to rename the moon. They want to call it something like Exit 1. You know, because it'll be the first exit in outer space when we start manned space travel to other planets. I think maybe we should call it something like Giant Ovary or Capitalism. It's big, it's white, it sits there and does nothing, and it has a lot of pull. And you know, why stop there? Why not rename the sun? I know the sun already has a name. Soul. Soul. Sounds like some Jewish guy eating halva in Miami Beach, you know? Soul. Well, ask Soul over there what he wants. I've got skin cancer. Ironic, Soul gave me soul sin cancer. Right. So, I think we should call the sun socialism. Because it's big, it's red, and it burns everybody. Yeah, well.
Hey, they should rename the movie Gateway to Mars.
Gateway to Mars, here we go. The Gateway Theater in downtown Pittsburgh proudly presents Gateway to Mars, the moon story. Well, as an American, I am fascinated by the continual conflict between lowbrow vitality and highbrow desiccation. You know, it's like Buddy Holly says, Peggy Sue, Peggy Sue, Peggy Sue. And William F. Buckley says, well, Miss Margaret Sue, her last name unknown, obviously a pseudonym, if you get my drift. Yeah, so, I mean, but there is this American conflict. You don't really see it in England. You do see it in black English, though, except there it's like all vitality and no la-di-da, lifted pinky, teacup shit. Whereas in England, it's all that stuff. And in America, you get the vector between the two. You know, you get, I'm gonna chew your ear off. Oh, excuse me, ma'am. Let me help you cross the street. It's a great country. And I've noticed something. There's like 3 different tracks in this country. There's the intellectual track, and they all have their theme of the month. You know, with the intellectuals, it's Dwight McDonald, theme of the month. With the politicians, it's James and Mary Carville. It's the theme of the month. James and Mary Carville talk about the '92 election. And with, you know, the pop culture, Michael Jackson marries Lisa Presley, and O.J. Simpson doesn't get the death penalty. So it's like 3 different tracks, and none of the other 2 know that the third one exists, you know. It's like intellectuals, O.J. Simpson, how vulgar, and the politicians, you know, it's like, Dwight McDonald, wasn't he a commie? You know, and the pop culture, James who? Dwight what? You know, so it's like that. Well, I'm the wrong hero, but you can call me Corruption Man. Da-da-da, Corruption Man! My motto, everything is not enough. I want more. You are breathing my oxygen. I invented oxygen. I have a patent on it. It goes back to 1957. Start paying me royalties right now or get out! Stop breathing my oxygen. It's like Corruption Man in The Invasion of Haiti. The hamburger jockeys have got a planet buster. What do? Let's call for Corruption Man. Corruption Man! Hi, I'm Corruption Man. Give me all the money you have. That's not good enough. Got any checks? This check better not bounce. Got a credit card? Very good. Okay, I think I can help you now. What I'm going to do is sell cheap and shoddy goods to the military, so when they get here, their guns will fall apart, and you can take them over and invade the United States, and it'll be called the United States of Haiti. Corruption, man. Well, you know what World War III is going to be about? The earth against its people. It will really be a world war. You get what I mean? Too many people. And what are we going to do? Liberals botch things up by like not thinking enough about them and just sort of like throwing money and whatnot, and conservatives screw things up by just letting everything go to seed and sitting on their fat complacent butts, and before too long it's too late to fix it and everything's a mess. But that's okay because they can blame it on the liberals. So, you know, basically what it is liberals create viruses and conservatives allow them to escape. And the problem is with this country that the political discourse in this country is basically rival mobsters sitting around a table feuding about how to divvy up the swag. Like, I'll give you Union City, New Jersey if you give me New York City. No way, man! Union City only has 100,000. New York City has 8 million. I'll tell you what, I'll throw in Los Angeles. You can have Los Angeles, the Homewood section of Pittsburgh, and I'll throw in Buffalo. No, man, not good enough. No, I want at least 2 of the 5 boroughs. No, I'll give you Van Cortlandt Park, 242nd Street, and north of that, and that's all you get. You know. Well, there's an old old saying, steal a dollar, you're a thief. Steal a million, you're a politician. With a failed SNL out in Odessa, Texas. Yeah, and the thing is, why is our political discourse so feeble? It's because of the questions that journalists ask the president. They don't ask him like fair questions or even judicious questions. They say, would it be fair, President Clinton, to say that you have failed at everything you've attempted so far? President Clinton, aren't you being hypocritical to claim that you're trying to help the people of Haiti when in fact Cuba is ruled by an equally repugnant dictator? President Clinton, isn't it true that you don't really know what you're doing and you don't know what you're going to do next? President Clinton, a lot of your critics have said that basically you're not rowing with both oars in the waters. President Clinton, how do you square your campaign promises of a tax cut with the fact that, in fact, there has been no tax cut? None of the programs that you've promised to enact have been pushed through Congress. Now, some of your critics say it's because you are weak and ineffectual. What do you have to say to this, President Clinton? Poor guy, you know? I'll tell you. And then there's the conspiracy theorists. Everything in the country is being run by a big, bad conspiracy. A conspiracy so subtle and powerful that it manages to keep itself hidden, even as it dominates a country of 250 million people. Man, that is some conspiracy. I guess you could call it stealth government, right? It flies below the radar. You don't see it. Basically, but there's no evidence of this conspiracy. You see how powerful this conspiracy is? They managed to destroy all the evidence. It's a circular argument. There is no conspiracy. Greedy, ambitious people run the country for their own benefit. Period. That's it. No conspiracy. It's not too hard to figure out. I'll repeat it for you if you like. Greedy, complacent, ambitious people run the country for their own benefit. They don't give a rat's ass about you or your mother on welfare or your dad in the hospital or your sister forced to turn a trick out in the inner city to buy Similac for her baby, you know? They don't care. And why should they? What's in it for them? Your vote? Huh. Great, they can buy more votes than you ever dreamed of, little man, you know, so don't worry about it, all right? But conspiracy theorists are the kind of people who can't hold down a 9-to-5 job, but they can tell you to the exact moment when Oswald killed Kennedy and who was behind it all, you know? It's like they fill out the job application form. Hobbies? Proving Oswald was a patsy! Written in crayon, upside down, you know? The B is actually a small letter B, you know? Proving Oswald was a patsy? Well, what's that mean? Yeah. So, I don't know. It's kind of odd. You know, I want to write a book called What Americans Know. And they would give it to people who come to this country from other countries. It would be a short book, you know, maybe 80 pages. But it would help them become Americans because it would have a list of everything that Americans know that they should also know. Like how to fill a car radiator with windshield wiper fluid and drive it another 20 miles to the gas station. That is something that every American knows, you know. So, or a French franc will fit in the Boston subway token system. You know? Well, I'll tell you what else I want to do. I want to build heartless shelters where heartless people can go to hide from the homeless. But actually, I think they already have them. I think they're called suburbs. I'm not sure. I also want to combine Mark Twain and James Joyce and write Huckleberry Finnegan's Wake, River Run, the end. You know they say a carrot improves your vision at night. So does a hand grenade. They say an apple cleans your teeth. So does a hand grenade. They say that an apple a day keeps the doctor away. I need to know what kind of fruit keeps the policeman away. They got some little scented thing you can hang in your car to keep policemen from bothering you. You know, like, can I see your license and register? What's that? It smells like a policeman's pension check. Yes, it's cop off. It's the anti-cop scented little thing I hang in my car. You know, and okay, go on your way, slow down, you know. I followed Steely Dan's advice in the song, Ricky, Don't Lose That Number, and I wrote a letter to myself, and it went, Dear Wrong Hero, you're great, signed, me. And I answered myself. I wrote, Dear Wrong Hero, I really enjoyed your letter, especially the parts about me. Signed, the Wrong Hero. You know what I think about sometimes is the private lives of advertising figures. Like Mr. Peanut. Does he actually have an eye where that little monocle is? Whoever heard of a peanut with eyes anyway? Potatoes, yes, but peanuts? And, I don't know, Poppin' Fresh, you know, when he goes, what is that? You know, I can just see him in the goddamn Marine Corps. All right, you men, line up! All right, Poppin' Fresh, into the oven with you, you know. We eat tonight, man. And Mr. Clean. Isn't he just Lex Luthor? You know, it's like, shoot, I will destroy super, oops, Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean. Yeah, yes. Okay, now this message for Save the Termites. Hi, I'm Sally Struthers. These termites have never eaten! They're 2 days old, they've never eaten! But you can help by sending $15 to Save the Termites. But hurry, they're devouring our headquarters. Well, did you know that in the 1930s, people used to refer to marijuana as Mexican opium? Isn't that a great idea? Mexican opium? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Ah, I feel slow and lazy. I think I'll take a nap. I've noticed something in my wide-ranging readings. Crazy people, drug addicts, and geniuses are all obsessed by American Indians. They are. It's true, Steve. I'm telling you. It's like, and you know, now the Indians are finally getting their own back. You know, they got these casinos and stuff. It's like, pretty soon casinos are going to be the only place where you can smoke and drink. Which is kind of appropriate, actually, when you think about it, you know? The Indians gave us tobacco, and we destroyed their lives with firewater. So, 300 years later, we have these casinos where we can squander every penny we have and give it all back to the Indians, and they can make us drunk and give us cancer. You know, and it's like, the Indians themselves couldn't have devised a better scheme for getting back at us than by building casinos. In fact, didn't the Indians think of this? Hey! Those Indians aren't so dumb after all. Maybe those geniuses and drug addicts and crazy people have the right idea by being obsessed by American Indians. Well, okay. Thanks for sticking around. I've just got about 15 more minutes here. Just kidding, just kidding. I'd like to tell a little story to conclude my presentation. The owl and the pussycat went to sea, and a little girl also drifted out to sea in another part of the ocean on a set of blow-up teeth. She was rescued by a man on an inflatable lobster. Meanwhile, scientists discovered that 1 million Earths could fit into the sun. Unfortunately, they also discovered that they would have to hire union labor and that they would demand time and a half to do it. A convicted arsonist recently bought 18 homes in Jamaica Plain. Now, little did he realize that he could have bought them on the sun and eliminated the middleman. Plus, he wouldn't have had all those pesky asbestos removal problems to worry about. Now, my new motto, the new motto of the Asbestos Council is, asbestos you each morning. Watching television, I realized that Fidel Castro's beard is the same color as Bill Clinton's hair. And maybe that's why all the Cubans are coming here. They just fixate on the hair. Castro's beard, Clinton's hair. You know, it's like, they reach for the light instinctively. Maybe that's also why that deranged pilot flew his plane into the bedroom of the president at 2 in the morning. You know, talk about a wake-up call. Can I talk to President Clinton? He's not here right now. He's at Blair House. You're lying to me! That'll get his attention. Wake up, President Clinton! Yes. You know, in Mozambique, you know where Mozambique is? It's in Africa. Bob Dylan wrote a song about it. It's a little island off of the African coast. Well, in Mozambique... No, oh, you're right, that's Madagascar. Mozambique, however, is still in Africa. Sorry. Homeless people pay 12 cents a month to live in vacant zoo cages in Mozambique. And in Rwanda, baboons have taken over a safari lodge. They have. And nobody asks them to pay 12 cents a month, I'll tell you. Because, you know, they bark and they scratch and they bite. So, anyway, in London's Heathrow Airport, Queen Elizabeth's corgi dogs terrorized a police dog. And in an unrelated incident, the London police have decided that their police dogs from now on will be artificially inseminated, but not by Queen Elizabeth's corgi dogs. Ah, yes. Oh, did you hear about that concert that Green Day gave on the Esplanade? Did you? Yeah. Guess what? December 6th is the 25th anniversary of Altamont. So I guess Green Day was just like warming up for that, you know? Break out the pool cues. Yeah. Well. Yes. I'm the wrong hero. I don't believe in abstaining from sex, just from intimacy. I say to my girlfriend, I'm going to take you away from all this and take you to somewhere far worse. I say to her, hey, baby, it's the penis. Strong enough for a man, but made for a woman. But men like it too. Yeah. I went to Canada, and you know something? Canada has a 99% literacy rate. Unfortunately, they have nothing to write home about. It's like, dear Mom, it snowed, love, Pierre. 100% literacy rate and a vocabulary of 6 words. So, anyway, I'm the wrong hero. Men call me rebel without applause. And all through my life, you know, I've been in constant conflict with the adult world. Da-da-da-da-da-da. You like that, didn't you? Like one time I was walking down the street in Pittsburgh, and I used to race the adults. I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I'd walk beside the adults and walk really fast and pass them, you know? And like I thought I was really slick, you know, because I was walking faster than the grown-ups. They'd be going, and I'd be going, you know, and I'd look at them, my spiteful little brat face. But one day, this woman in high heels was like walking along, and I went, and she said, oh, so you want to race, little boy? Like that, and you know, she just blew my mind. It's like, you weren't supposed to know this! Well, I'm happy that you, in fact, noticed, because you were supposed to. I'm the wrong hero. Good night.
Hero, 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 hero. Hold the onion. Hero. Hold the onion in the pickles.
I'm the wrong hero. I read the Phoenix. I read that incredibly self-serving account of that comedian who had been a comedian 20 years ago and decided to try it one more time 17 years later. And at the end of his show, the guy who booked him into the Comedy Connection said, I would give you a 7.5, 6 for stage presence and 10 for material. And it's like he was doing the same crappy shit that he bombed with 17 years ago. If that's what it takes to be a comedian, no thanks. Because this is the new comedy. Men have called it the new comedy. That is, some men. Other men have called it ranting. Whatever you call it, I'm the wrong hero. Rebel without applause. Greetings, carbon brains.
Greetings, hero.
I'm the wrong hero. I offer a little something for everybody because I caught my roommate's cold. So just lean a little closer. I'm the wrong hero, best-selling author and gun owner. Somehow the two are related. I couldn't say exactly how. I have often thought that in order to ease the transition between becoming a boat person and becoming a native of the United States, perhaps the U.S. State Department should hand foreigners a little book with the title, What Americans Know. And so, for the remainder of my set, I am going to discuss the contents of this book entitled, What Americans Know. Americans know that God hates homosexuals, but that Jesus thinks they're kind of cute. That in fact, Jesus was born in a log cabin in the year 0 AD on Christmas Day and spoke flawless American. That all Protestants work 18 hours a day because they adhere to the Protestant work ethic. That all Catholics consider the Pope infallible and have enormous families, numbering in the dozens. That all Baptists live in the South and are stupid and backwards and like to burn crosses on their lawns and toast marshmallows in them. And that all Mormons look like Donnie and Marie Osmond, sing in choirs, and are required to have dozens of wives. And that all Muslims are slaves to predestination and are prone to murmur things like, Allah wills it, inshallah, inshallah, as they drive truckfuls of dynamite into army barracks and skyscrapers. This is what Americans know. That having a pet teaches a child responsibility and the facts of life. Like, what's that little brown string hanging out of the goldfish's bum, Mommy? That's his tail. Why is Swimmy floating face down on the top of the bowl? Oh, he's just sleeping. Here's what Americans know. That most people on the road these days drive so recklessly that they shouldn't have been given driver's licenses. Yet, on the other hand, auto insurance rates are confiscatory. You can't have it both ways. Either the drivers really suck and the auto insurance is just about right, or the auto insurance is really too high and everybody's a really great driver. I'm surprised there aren't more accidents. You know, I almost got run over on the way over here. Some girl in a car didn't stop at the intersection. I thought she was trying to kill me. It turns out in Boston that's called flirting. You know, if you laid all the pedestrians in Boston end to end, I'd probably run over them too. And a corollary of what Americans know, that all really good auto mechanics are unshaven louts with a year's supply of filth under their fingernails, breath that can curl wallpaper and kill pit bulls at 10 paces, and an IQ roughly equivalent to that of a ceiling fan. Everybody knows that this is what really good auto mechanics are like, you know? I mean, you can tell if they're level-headed if they have tobacco juice dribbling out both sides of their mouth at the same time. Yeah, that's your auto mechanic. Now, here's something else that all Americans know, and I think most of you guys here can relate to this one, that comedians actually welcome drunken hecklers because they spice up the routine. You know, and after the show, the comedian and the drunken heckler
they exchange money and perhaps bodily fluids and go out and have a drink together after the show. Because, after the show, it's all buddy-buddy. In fact, Americans know that comedians are always witty and cheerful, no matter whether they're on stage or not, 24 hours a day. This is what Americans know, that if you buy pharmaceuticals on the street, they're drugs and they're bad. But if you get them prescribed by a doctor, they're medicine and they're good. The same drugs, Here's also what Americans know, that most telephone surveys are basically guesswork. Because everybody knows that people who do surveys, that people who do surveys over the telephone are basically.
That was great.
Thank you. That wasn't real phlegm. That was a character from a Faulkner novel, Phlegm Snopes.
Oh, phlegm.
Fee-fi, faux, phlegm. Anyway, yes, that. Most people who do telephone surveys are 23-year-old psychotic slackers who can't hold a real job down, and they're jacked up on burnt coffee, and they make up all the answers as they go along. They got little flips of foam coming out of the corners of their mouths. What do you mean you're going to vote for Reagan? He's an asshole! Well, mark that down as won't vote for Reagan. Here's something else that all Americans know, that if you buy an encyclopedia, your child will go to Oxford. Okay, maybe it's Oxford, Mississippi, or I don't know, Odessa, Texas Community College, or somewhere like that. But your child will go to college if you buy an $800 encyclopedia, which you being an unemployed steelworker is the equivalent of about 18 weeks of your pay. Oh, we're eating mac and beans, we're eating pork and beans and macaroni and cheese, but the kid will grow up to be a big success. This encyclopedia says that copyright 1953. The kid's up there, who's the president? Eisenhower! What is atomic fission? I don't know! Here's something else that all Americans know, that book learning is good, but it's no substitute for the school of hard knocks. You gotta go out there and get your head banged in a couple of times, then you'll be real smart, like me, say, Oh, so you're reading a book, huh? Well, why don't you read a book that tells you how to clean up your room, huh? Why don't you read a book on how to make some money so we can move out of this stinking dump, huh? Here's something else that all Americans know, that kids today don't know what hard work is. You don't know what hard work is. When I was a kid, I used to get $2. Okay, Dad, you're right. I don't know what hard work is. Okay, but you're going to get a coronary to keep screaming like that, and then I'll have to take 3 jobs. Here's something else that all Americans know, that the customer is always right. Stick 'em up. But they don't argue with me. I'm a customer, and the customer's always right. Give me all your money. You kids today don't know what hard work is. Robbing banks is hard work. You gotta pay off the dicks, you gotta pay off the cops, you gotta pay off the city inspector. And here's something else that all Americans know. That all librarians are mousy spinsters with a mole growing out of their chin and a hair growing out of the mole, and they smell like aqua velva, and they're always telling people to be quiet no matter where they are, on the subway. Quit making that noise! All Americans know that women of all ages are turned on by men in uniforms, be it a Nazi uniform or a security guard uniform. It makes them wet. And then women are also always turned on by serial killers, criminals, and men with hooks and eye patches. And when they go to see, Mutiny on the Bounty, they're rubbing themselves because, the guy with the hook and the eye patch and the parrot on his shoulder really turns them on, So, and here's another thing that all Americans know, that women become so involved with their soap operas that they actually believe them to be true. And when they see a soap opera star on the street, they mob him en masse and tear off bits of his hair and clothing, and take it back to some little shrine that they keep. All Americans know this. All Americans know that the early work of highly regarded artists always shows signs of their later genius, and that Picasso's vomit and Monet's toenail clippings are worth a lot of money. All Americans also know that the lyrics of popular songs are infallible fonts of wisdom. That you can learn all you need to know by listening to Boogie Oogie Oogie and Rico Suave until your ears fall off. Like, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Yeah, that's a real formula for success right there. At least if you want to be a crack dealer, row, row, row your boat. All Americans know that the ads on television never lie, because if a claim weren't true, you couldn't say it on television because they won't let you. They won't let you say. How do we know that's true? Well, if it weren't true, it couldn't be on television. And Americans know that newspapers always tell the truth, and the consequences be damned. And that if you read the newspaper every day and watch the network news every night, you will be incredibly well informed and can get that job in the State Department toot sweet just by showing up at the door. Well, I read the Boston Herald and watch the ABC News. You're hired. Cyprus crisis, here we come. Here's something else that all Americans know, that if you don't watch TV, drive, or have a drink or two every now and then there's something wrong with you. All Americans know that most lottery winners refuse to quit their jobs, no matter how lowly, because they don't want to break up their settled routine. I'm a dishwasher, I'm worth $1 million, I'm up to my elbows in filth, but I'm not going to quit this cushy job. I'm up for a pension in 18 years. And besides, those pieces of steak I find on the plates sure do tickle my tummy. Yes, sir. Tonight they're having asparagus spears. Maybe they'll leave some half-chewed stalks for me. I got $1 million, but I don't care. I'm going to stay here till I die. That a trip to Disney World is the magical experience of a lifetime because you actually get to meet Goofy in person. The dream of a lifetime! What will I say to the great man? Hi, Goofy! Gee, that's funny! Oh, and also that Disney movies are classics. Because when you go to the video store and rent one, it says so right on the box. And if it weren't true, then they couldn't say it because they wouldn't let them. Something else that all Americans know, that American Indians are fascinating and have much to teach us. And that cowboys of the Old West were not illiterate loafers who smelled like cows, but actually were dead shots and great heroes. Every last one of them to a man. All Americans know that every red-blooded American male is a sports fanatic with an encyclopedic knowledge of arcane statistics. Now, he might not be able to tell you who T.S. Eliot was, but he can tell you exactly what the circumstances were when Boone Powell hit that home run, which was actually a foul because it fell 3 feet of the foul line in the 1972 World Series, which was played in Baltimore, of course, which Pittsburgh won. See? All Americans know these things. that high school sports are an excellent molder of character, and the man who excels in high school sports always goes on to greater glories in the corporate arena. That soldiers and businessmen make the best presidents because of their proven ability at molding their subordinates. That a businessman is the best president because he's too rich to steal. How do you think he got to be a businessman? Huh? That the government is the source of all that's gone wrong with this country, except of course when you're on disability or unemployment or welfare, that it's the source of all that's good in this country. That every politician from dog catcher on up is lazy and corrupt and beholden to special interest groups. I know how he got that dog catcher job. Yeah, I know. A little grease in the palm, man. That's how he got it. I know how he got that job for picking up the garbage. Yeah, a little grease in the palm there. He gives 15 deposit bottles to the alderman every week in exchange for his job. All Americans know that some criminals are so nefarious that they ought to be executed right on the spot, without a trial. And all Americans also know that policemen are drunk with power, domineering, bossy, none too bright, and hang out at donut shops instead of doing their job of protecting hard-working taxpayers. All Americans know these things. All Americans know that the United States exerts a stabilizing influence around the world by whipping the less developed nations into line and enabling to share in the fruits of civilization. Okay, so maybe we take all of their oil and helium, but still, in exchange they get McDonald's and food in plastic wrap. So it's an even trade. All Americans know that with a little bit of money, you can live like a king in Mexico. All Americans know that machines and foreigners are stealing our jobs. There's nothing subtle about it. A computer in a black mask sneaks up on you, taps you on the shoulder. All right, buddy, you're fired. Here's your pink slip. You know? A greasy foreigner with matted hair walks up to the president of GM and says, "Adios, buddy. Habla Espanol? You're fired. Terminato." All Americans know that these things happen on a daily basis. All Americans know that foreigners only come to this country to mooch welfare benefits off of hardworking Americans. Here's something else that all Americans know.
Sonny, have a drink.
But Dad, I'm only 8 years old.
Have a drink! I'm going to tell you something about the way things are. Now, I don't want you trusting any of them Irishmen, because all Irishmen are drunks. And I don't want you going around with them Italians, because all Italians are sneaky crooks. Did you take my drink? And I don't want you going out with them Germans, because they're all too big for their britches. And I don't want you going around with them Swedes and them Polacks, because they're all stupid. And them British people, they're all la-di-da, lifting pinky, teacup, rattling little stuff. And the French, they're all ooh-la-la, French croissant, free cheese, bunch of cunts. And the Spanish, them fuckers will kill you just as soon as look at you. Finish your drink. And the Australians, they're all a bunch of drunks. Give me that. And the Canadians, they're all dull. There. What did a Canadian ever invent, huh? And all Scottish people and Jewish people are thrifty. And all factories. Always busy. Always working, 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 working. And all Africans are lazy. And all Mexicans and Russians are money-hungry wheeler dealers who will sell you their teenage sister for a chocolate bar.
Did it work? Was it broke?
And all these foreigners come to the United States because it's got the best weather and the best people in the whole stinking world. And all immigrants become filthy rich at our expense, just so long as they work 18 hours a day and learn what Americans know.
Well, there's a few more things that immigrants should learn if they want to know what Americans know. That all farmers are vengeful coots shackled to rusted tractors off in the grain belt who resent city slickers and will do anything at all that they can to give them their comeuppance. That all Bostonians speak English the way the Queen speaks it off in England. That all Yankees are crusty and taciturn and suspicious and given to saying folksy little put-downs and following up by saying, hey, yo, how far does this here road go? I don't know, I ain't never measured it, hey, yo. All Californians are spacey and glassy-eyed and given to saying things like, far out, man, and everything is everything, and cosmic and groovy. And that all Texans are two-gun-toting desperados who have a pickup truck with a spittoon on the dashboard. That all Southerners are sickeningly hospitable and polite. Unless you get on their bad side, in which case they instantaneously become murderously vengeful psychopaths straight out of Deliverance. That all old money millionaires speak through clenched teeth, call their wives lovey, and have expensive manicures and hair treatments every week. And that all poor people have bad teeth and talk too loud. Like,
Hey, Fred!
what?
Hey, Fred! Wow! Fred! Come here! What do you want? I gotta tell you something! What? Come here, I gotta tell you something! Wow! Wow! Your fly's open! Wow! Okay, thanks!
And that's what Americans know. There's more, but that'll have to wait till next week. Now, before I go, I'd like to talk about the 1996 GOP nomination. Now, I know it's a little early, but it's never too early. Because you know, by January, they're already going to be fumbling around New Hampshire. So here's some things to remember. That Dan Quayle has apple cheeks. That Dole is looking and sounding more and more like George Wallace every day. And I don't mean the comedian George Wallace either. That Kemp resembles an indicted televangelist, which will serve him in good stead down south, actually. That Lamar Alexander will never be president because his name is Lamar. It's like, we have the great world leaders assembled today: Francois Mitterrand, John Major, and Lamar Alexander. Yeah! Well, we're going to hold down, you know. So Lamar Alexander, change your name or forget being president, you know. Jim Baker, his haircut makes him look like Sergeant Carter. You know, you can just see his sidekick, Gomer Pyle. Vice President Pyle! Pyle, you idiot! You forgot to pass the NAFTA treaty! Okay, Sergeant, right away! That Pete Wilson looks like Mr. Rogers. It's a wonderful day in my state. Immigrants, sorry, go back to Mexico. No benefits for you. It's a wonderful day in the Golden State. That Richard Cheney looks like Gorbachev. And Phil Graham. You ever see Phil Graham? Maybe not. Take a good look at him. You'll be seeing more of him. He makes Adlai Stevenson look like Mr. Universe, you know? Really, he does. I think that the 1996 GOP dream ticket is going to be Colin Powell and Bill Weld. And I really think this, because hey, you know, you can't lose. You can't lose with it. I mean, you know, God and Jesus versus Colin Powell and Bill Weld. Well, God is doing pretty well in the southern precincts, but Powell and Weld are knocking them down everywhere else. It looks like Powell and Weld, 61% for Powell and Weld, 39% for God and Jesus. Sorry, Jesus, but beards went out with Abraham Lincoln. Try it in the year 2000, okay? But I got the campaign slogan for the Colin Powell, Bill Weld campaign. I've already got it. I got the bumper stickers and everything. I'm ready. I'm sitting on a gold mine if, in fact, Powell and Weld become the GOP nominees. Elect a soldier and a solder. Powell and Weld. 96. You know what I'd really like to do? I'd like to establish a bipartisan committee charged with abolishing the Democratic and Republican parties. Except the only people on it would be Democrats and Republicans, so I don't suppose I'd get very far with that one. What parties are they going to have to replace the Democratic and Republican parties? You know, 200 years ago, they didn't have, strictly speaking, what we refer to as Democrats and Republicans. They had the Whigs, you know, and the Democrat Republicans, and the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. So maybe 100 years from now, 200 years from now, they'll have stuff like the Never on Sunday Party, or the Free Beer Party, or the Nuke 'em all and let God sort 'em out party. You know? Maybe. You just never know. I'm going to open up a punk rock fashion store. It's going to be called Fear and Clothing. I can see the branches. Fear and Clothing in Las Vegas. Yeah, all right. With our special guest, proprietor Kierkegaard. You know, I think that if you got Mr. Rogers and you turned him backwards, you could make him into Mr. Srigor. Kids, you're nothing special. I'm gonna throw this big brick at you. Yeah, and I figured out after many years what Mickey Mouse really stands for. Want to hear? Who's the leader of the world that's made for you and me? MIC, Military Industrial Complex. KEY, Keynesian Economic Yoke. MOUSE, more of the United States engulfment. So that's what Mickey Mouse stands for, okay? Well, I'd like you all to know that this episode of The Wrong Hero was brought to you by Recombinant DNA. Recombinant DNA. We bring things to life. And, let's see. Yes. I think I learned everything I know about comedy from one of the greatest comedians who ever lived, my cousin Bob. Really. You know what he used to do? He used to go into religious bookstores. You know those religious bookstores they have in every shopping mall in the Great Heartland? He used to go into religious bookstores and he would scream at the proprietor, "My temple is a house of worship, but you have turned it into a den of thieves!" But he never went so far as to actually knock the books over or anything like that. He just wanted to let it be known that, you know, someone was looking out there. He would walk into a stationery store where the proprietor is really highfalutin. He would casually let all of his paper route money fall on the floor. He'd have this $20 bill that he had slaved 3 weeks, to earn. He would let it fall on the floor, and then the guy would come up to him and say, "Oh, can I help you, sir?" He was 14 years old, so this is pretty heady stuff for a 14-year-old. It's the power of money. He is an unemployed economist. And is there a worse fate for any intelligent person? An unemployed economist. What kind of economist are you? You can't even get a job. You don't have any money. So, poor guy, man, I'll tell you. And his father, my uncle, he would say stuff like, "Now you're cooking with gas." And my cousin would say to him, "Dad, you're an idiot! What does that mean?" Yeah, Cousin Bob, boy, I sure wish he was here today. I sure do. I got most of my sense of humor from Cousin Bob, I think. He would run into Castro convertible stores and go, "Fidel!" I'm not saying that he was perfect, Every once in a while he let a duck go, but one day he walked into to my aunt's house and said to us, "As soon as I saw your face, O Krieger, I knew you were destined to rule the universe." I'll tell you, man, he was quite a guy, and like I say, I got my entire sense of humor from him. God bless him. One time I was hiking, I was in Martha's Vineyard, and I was at the duck sanctuary reading Milton's Paradise Lost and waiting for some ducks to show up. And a woman with her little boy walked by, and she said to me, "My little boy's name is Timmy. What's your name?" And I said, "Moloch." And she said, "Timmy, say hello to Moloch." And little Timmy said, "Hello, Moloch." True story. And that's going to be the title of my autobiography. Hello, Moloch. Too bad Henry Miller already got there, but hey, what the hell. When I was a little kid, my mother would read to me. She'd say, "The 3 little kittens have lost their mittens and don't know where to find them." And I'd say to her, "Mom, kittens wearing mittens? Kittens wearing mittens? What kind of crazy nightmare world is this you brought me into, Mother?" I'm the wrong hero. Good night. See you, Bill.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, it's the Reggae Jam.
Please, Ray, I heard about a place you might want to go.
Yes? Reggae music. Truly. Reggae music is one of the greatest inventions that God ever gave to his ungrateful people. Because no matter how serious a lyric might be, if a reggae jam or a reggae band is performing it, it becomes incredibly life-affirming. Like, when as in silks my Julia goes, ah, how that liquefaction taketh me. It's like, When I sing so my Julia goes, when I sing so my Julia goes. Or Little Boy Blue, come blow your horn. The sheep's in the meadow, the cow's in the corn. Now if it was a blues musician, he'd go, Little Boy Blue, baby please come blow your horn. And it would be incredibly sad. But if a reggae musician does it, it's like a Little Boy Blue, come blow your horn. Little Boy Blue, come blow. It's a little boy blue in the jungle. Ooh, it's a little boy blue in the jungle. Ooh, little boy blue, come blow your horn. Out in the meadow with a sheep in the corn. So, that's why I love reggae music. Yes, indeed. There's two disturbing trends in television advertising which really bother me, or in advertising in general. One is, you know those, what's that horrible stuff that's not beer, but they're trying to pretend that it's sort of like some sort of beer like Zima? You see that? The two guys walk into the bar, it's off in like the desert somewhere, who knows, and there's no such thing as beer, and they don't know what to order, and the woman is looking at them, and this look on her face, it's like, don't embarrass me. I've never seen you before. You look like two of the Three Stooges, but don't embarrass me. That is the most potent advertising trick in the entire lexicon, is the desire of the male not to embarrass his female companion or potential female companions. It's like, I didn't use Vitalis, and now the buck stops here. I have no children. My life is meaningless. If only, if only, if only. If only I had used Vitalis before I lost all my hair, my heirs would be overrunning the earth right now. But as it is, my hairs aren't even overrunning my head, because I didn't use Vitalis. I embarrassed all of the women. Like that song, Frank Mills. I love him, but it embarrasses me to walk down the street with him. That's a tender love song for the Aquarian age, huh? You know? He's got golden chains on his leather jacket, and on the back are written the names Mary and Mom and Hell's Angels. You know, so don't embarrass me. Don't take me to the salad bar. Take me to Chez Joe, the proletarian French restaurant. Your maitre d' for today? Just a guy named Joe. Sit the fuck down. Get your own fucking water. What am I, your slave? And the other trend is, unless your kids are weird, they'll eat it. Is this perverted or what? Unless your kids are weird, they'll eat it. Unless your kids have been stolen by elves and replaced with changelings in the dead of night, in which case they will probably be gnawing on the legs of the kitchen table come morning, they'll eat it. Yeah, well, that's the story of living in America, isn't it? Isn't it? Isn't it? Unless your parents are weird, they'll take it up the ass! 18 hours a day, back-breaking labor. The government steals 1/3 of it. But unless your parents are weird, they'll take it, and they'll like it. I'm the wrong hero, and this time I'm going for good. Good night.
Hi, I'm the wrong hero. Folks call me Rebel Without Applause. I thought in order to conclude this evening, I would discuss a subject which is dear to my heart. And that subject is, dear viewers, strange beliefs of Americans. Well, there are many, and I will try to get through as many of them as I can in the approximately 40 minutes which remain. Well, the first strange belief of Americans I'd like to discuss is that we have no need of heroes like Ulysses or Hercules or Samson or Agamemnon, not when we have Bucky Dent and Mookie Wilson and the immortal Boog Powell. Another strange belief is that newspaper horoscopes are always accurate. Well, actually, the ones in the Boston Herald are, in fact, always accurate. And did you hear? Their Sunday section is only 99 cents, whereas that of the Boston Globe is $1.75. I have in no way been counseled by anybody, least of all the Boston Herald, to mention this interesting fact, but nonetheless, I will continue with my survey of the strange beliefs of Americans. That if a dog growls at you, it means you're up to something sneaky. Of course, if you happen to have dog biscuits on you, that must therefore mean that you're a paragon of virtue. Another strange belief is that dogs are masculine and cats are feminine, if not downright effeminate. And of course, a belief that you will often hear expressed is that it is cruel to keep a big dog in the city. I guess it's okay to keep a small dog, even though their territorial needs are perhaps just as great as that of the larger canine. However, this is not something that people often discuss. Of course, it is a commonly held belief that many pets eat better than humans, and that on any given day, you can see old people arguing over which dog food happens to taste the best when you are standing in the pet food section of the supermarket. Another common belief is that you can use your pants belt, if you happen to be a male, to replace a car's fan belt. Of course, you know, this is probably true if you got them skinny belts that certain types of men like to wear instead of the big, thick, fat belts that your dad used to brandish at you and threaten to whoop you with. I can see that I'm getting just a little too cornball for you, so I'll proceed to the next bizarre belief of Americans, that the sound of a car door slamming can tell you whether or not the vehicle in question is quality goods. Well, if that were in fact the case, I suppose car manufacturers would take great care to manufacture cars which were all door. No clutch, no alternator, no radiator, just a big door with wheels, propelled presumably by rocket power. Now, I know that you are perhaps unaccustomed to me in my more introspective mode, so I will get right to the heart of the matter. Many Americans believe that cab drivers always take the most circuitous route whenever they pick you up, just so they can wring an extra dollar out of you. Well, actually, this is probably true. I've never actually tested this, at least not since 1975, when I first set foot in the fair city of Boston and was immediately swindled by a cab driver who charged me an incredible sum to drive me from the airport to Linnaean Street in Cambridge. Perhaps I didn't help matters by pronouncing it Linnaean Street. However, I suppose cab drivers can tell a rube a mile away. Another bizarre and curious belief of Americans is that practical jokes and gags are always hilariously funny, and that X-ray specs really are a hilarious optical illusion, and for that matter, that fake vomit and the fly in the ice cube are guaranteed to liven up any stodgy and humdrum social gathering. Be it a funeral, a wedding, or a bar mitzvah. Let no man say that the wrong hero is not culturally aware. and highly sensitive. Many Americans believe that it is desirable to take powerful painkillers whenever they feel the slightest throbbing ache or pain. Well, actually, come to think of it, no, not powerful painkillers, just a handful of good old aspirin. That'll fix you up in a jiff. Many Americans believe that you shouldn't mix beer, wine, and hard liquor. Of course, that would mean that martinis would be out of the question. But, hey, who can say for sure? Americans believe that drunks always slur their words in a lovably comic fashion. Of course, if they had grown up around drunks, they might think otherwise. Many Americans believe that a BA in English is a one-way ticket to Palookaville. Actually, it's a round-trip ticket. Please, don't make that mistake again. Americans think that if you win a lottery or a sweepstakes, or you come into a great deal of money through an inheritance or some other means, that you should take a month-long cruise in order to let your thoughts settle, and so that you might decide in a tranquil setting exactly what to do with your money. Of course, you know, a month-long absence, spontaneous and unexplained, would probably make the neighbors speculate at great length as to exactly what you're up to. But Americans don't discuss that when they pass these somewhat childish beliefs on to their children and others less wise. Americans believe that you never reach the top without money, hard work, and connections. Well, as far as I can tell, this is true. Americans think that secretaries always know more than their pompous bosses, who would be totally lost without their guidance. And if that's the case, then why exactly do they even bother hiring secretaries to executives when the secretaries themselves could do the job, and presumably a lot cheaper? Perhaps it is a remnant of what was once considered a patriarchal, male-dominated society, but which is fast becoming multicultural and equal a society. Then again, perhaps not. Who is to say? Americans believe that top executives not only make oodles and oodles of dough, but also, to a man, love the work they're doing. Well, if they love the work so much, perhaps they would do it for free. But, anyhow, that's just one man's opinion. And that man, of course, goes by the name of the wrong hero, rebel without applause. Americans believe that the second a man retires, he goes immediately to seed and kicks the bucket shortly thereafter. Well, of course, when I read the obituaries, more often than not I find that a person may have retired in 1968 and, as of, say, 25 years later, has finally made his quietus with a bare bodkin. So, I'm not quite sure this is actually a belief which Americans should hold. In fact, I do not approve of many of these beliefs. However, if the beliefs in question are in fact accurate, then I do approve of them. If they are wrong, then of course I am merely serving my role as a, how do you say, satirical model for the nation's youth to emulate. Yes, kids, you too can become popular, successful, and famous, not to mention sophisticated and witty, by simply wearing this type of hat and a mask to conceal your true identity. Americans believe that you can talk your way into any job whatsoever, just so long as you have a winning personality. In which case, I suppose there would be an awful lot of unqualified doctors, lawyers, and presidents. Hey, I didn't think of that. Americans believe that if you're the best at what you do, whatever it is, you'll become famous and widely renowned as an expert. Of course, if you've ever seen the experts on daytime television, it may perhaps incline you to question this pretty much unchallenged belief that many Americans hold. Americans believe that many great leaders owe their every success to working hard, but that it is their even harder working second bananas who do most of the really sweaty, grunting labor and who never get any credit for so doing. Americans believe that no man over the age of 35 should strike out on a second career. Of course, if the man in question is mortgaged to the hilt and has 15 children, several large dogs, and a wife, then perhaps this belief is accurate. Perhaps that man shouldn't go into business selling balsa wood umbrellas made out of paper imported from China at 1 cent apiece to be sold for the price of $3 and more. Perhaps that would not be judicious. Many Americans believe that their teachers love and remember every last one of their pupils, particularly those who go on to be famous, and perhaps they secretly fantasize that someday, should they become famous, their teacher will be able to pull, as out of a hat, many charming anecdotes of what they were like in their ill-remembered childhood, perhaps embarrassing them, but also filling them with pride at the same time. I do not think this is the case. I think many teachers forget 39 out of 40 of the pupils that they are expected to handle every year, if in fact they are public school teachers. The only ones they remember, in fact, are the ones who hand them large bribes and the ones who are the troublemakers. Take a good look at me and guess which one I was. Americans believe that rich guys get the best looking dames. You can hear them in bars constantly discussing this presumable injustice. Yeah, all them women they go for the guy with the slick back hair, Meanwhile, of course, our interlocutor is pissing away his mortgage money with a drink in each fat, sweaty hand, an admirable role model for the nation's youth to emulate. Americans believe that beautiful and intelligent women pretend to be dumb if they know what's good for them, and that, on the other hand, unattractive women become lesbians and feminists because they can't land a man. Americans believe that girls are bad at mathematics and throwing balls. And you will often hear an American say that all of the great chefs are men, and therefore that means that men are better cooks than women. Well, that could be, but think about it for a minute. Maybe men realize what a cushy job being a gourmet chef really is or can be and hog all of these jobs. And perhaps women are reluctant to take a job which is associated with a somewhat subservient role. But who is to say? This is, after all, the 1990s. And what I am attempting to do is to outline an American credo for the 90s. I follow in the footsteps of men such as H.L. Mencken and George G. Nathan, whose American credo came out in the 20s and which, alas, has dated somewhat, and more recently in the footsteps of an individual named Paul A. Dixon, who came out with a volume entitled There Are Alligators in Our Sewers. This is a branch of humor studies called Urban Folklore, Gossip, and American Credos. And now that I have totally explained away what I intend to do for the next half hour or so, and therefore deprived of any humor I might have had, you might as well get old grandma and grandpa in there, and maybe the kids, and anybody else you can rustle up, and set them in front of the TV. They might learn something, but I wouldn't count on it. Many Americans believe that if women had their way, men would always have to pay for sex. Well, I suppose if men had their way, they would make women pay for sex. If I had my way, I'd make everybody pay, regardless of whether they got sex or not. But, anyway, that's neither here nor there, nor any other place in between here and there. Where, perhaps? It is a common belief that a man always forgets birthdays and anniversaries, and as a consequence is forced to pay through the nose when the little woman tearfully reminds him of the same. I don't believe any sitcom was ever made between the years 1949 and 1971 without this being at least one episode, provided, of course, that it was a family-oriented sitcom and not one in which either the mother or, much less frequently, the father is inexplicably absent. Or, of course, a recent trend is that both parents are absent, as in The Outsiders on the prestigious Fox network, which only lasted one season. Many Americans believe that the surest way to get a woman into bed is to liquor her up and tell her that you love her. Well, I'm not going to touch that one. There are laws, you know. Many Americans believe that all women really want is to just marry some rich fella and stay at home and do nothing all day. Doing nothing, of course, would be eating bonbons, watching soap operas, and staring out the window. I wouldn't mind doing that myself. But ixnay on the bonbons. I'd rather have those little Dove bars that aren't actually bars, but they're little like circles of chocolate with ice cream in them. Especially the ones they come out with around Christmas time. They're really good. They have mint ice cream in them. They sure are tasty. And a festive addition to any Yuletide celebration. Now, I have to emphasize that this is public television, and the Dove Bar people have not approached me in any way, shape, or form and asked me to deliver an unsolicited testimonial for their product. Americans believe that lovers can't be friends and vice versa. In fact, that great man, Roy Orbison, once even had a song to this effect. That lovers can't be friends, and there's only one way it can end. You know, you don't appreciate how good a singer Roy Orbison really was until you try to sing one of his songs, especially if you can't sing. Many Americans think that once women hook a man, they become frumpy and shrewish. Well, I don't know. Maybe some women are like that. Maybe they have a tendency to coast once they've hit the big time, so to speak. Many men believe that when a woman gets pregnant, the husband is always the last to know. Yeah, they're wheeling her into the operating room. Honey, I didn't know. I thought maybe you just gained a mysterious 40 pounds for no good purpose, and that the fact that you were vomiting and craving pickles was simply incidental to life as a woman. I don't know. How stupid do they think men really are? Many Americans believe that wealthy neighborhoods all have tree-lined streets, and because they're so low in crime, they are an ideal place to raise children. Well, I don't know. There's several made-for-TV movies that are shown on network television which would disabuse you of that notion mighty quickly. But perhaps it is the very countervailing tendency, the fact that it contradicts so much of what Americans fondly believe, that makes it newsworthy and fit subject for the made-for-TV people. Who are these people anyway? What do they do? Am I getting a little bit like Andy Rooney or Garrison Keillor here? I'm sorry. Let's return to the matter at hand. Strange beliefs of Americans. That bachelor apartments are invariably pigsties. Well, I wouldn't go that far. It's against the law to raise pigs in unsanitary conditions. Many Americans believe that if you could predict the future, you would be happy and rich. I think, actually, if you could predict the future, your life would be one long rehearsal for death, since you would know the moment which you were destined to die. Or perhaps your cognitive powers wouldn't extend that far into the future. Yeah, now, if you could tell a future, would you be able to tell a future events that would occur even after you were dead? That's kind of a paradox, isn't it? Perhaps if you could tell the future, you'd be wealthy enough to hook up one of them gizmos where your brain is stuck in a gigantic jug of amniotic fluid and suspended for 30,000 years until medical science comes up with a way of restoring you to your pristine shape. Many Americans believe that artists are unworldly geniuses who can't earn a living, care nothing for material possessions, and look down their noses at pop culture. Well, I don't know. Maybe. Many Americans believe that a fascination with murder stories is indicative of a logical mind. That anyone could do the job of a television anchorman. That a best-selling author is, therefore, a good writer. And that nowhere are such bargains to be found as on the Home Shopping Network. Well, let me just ask you something. Couldn't you just go to the store for the price of maybe 50 cents worth of gasoline and buy the same thing for the same price and not have to pay the shipping charges? Okay, maybe your time is worth something. Maybe the time it would take you to actually get off your fat ass, get into the car, drive to the place, walk in the store, ask the salesperson where the stuff is, get it, buy it, bring it home, and sit there and gloat at it. Maybe that amount of time is roughly equivalent to the cost of the shipping and handling. I don't know. But it's something that has often puzzled me. Many Americans believe that massive spectacles involving the destruction of expensive machinery are invariably fascinating. Why, there's a whole genre of Hollywood movies in which this would be the perfect plot description. Many of them came out in just the last few months. In fact, I think that's the definition of a summer movie. Either it's some insufferably drooling and cute child, or it's massive spectacles involving the destruction of expensive machinery. Many Americans believe, I think from the movies, that newspaper editors are constantly shouting, "Stop the presses." Do you realize how expensive it is to stop the presses? And do you also realize that many news events are timed by our leaders to coincide with press time? And also, of course, that television has largely superseded the function of the newspaper man when it comes to delivering red-hot scoops. Americans believe that people who read too much become out of touch with normal, everyday folk. That a writer who doesn't turn out a masterpiece every day is really no writer at all. That the best movies were made in the 1930s and the 1940s, and the best television shows were made in the 1950s and the 1960s. I don't know, personally, I don't think there are any good movies or television shows. But that's just me. Americans believe that if you can cite the sources of your information, then your argument is virtually won. So what if the sources, the National Enquirer, or Human Events, or Commonweal? Nevertheless, many Americans believe that if you can cite your sources, you've won that argument. Americans believe that mothers want their sons to grow up to be sissies. How many times have you been in a supermarket and witnessed the mother and father squabbling over the conduct of their 8-year-old son, who is, of course, rambunctious and probably playing with army soldiers in the produce section and pretending that the cantaloupes are Rwanda, and seeing the father tell the mother not to rebuke the child because he doesn't want him to grow up to be a girly man. Americans believe that young whippersnappers who are too smart for their own good are inevitably handed their comeuppance, generally at the hands of some shrewd old codger. Well, I mean, for example, The Magnificent Ambersons by Booth Tarkington, who, of course, is a veritable galaxy of such quaint beliefs. That children don't respect their parents like they used to is another common American belief. That acquired traits can be inherited is another. That being a country and western musician is much more difficult than it looks. And that people who live in the city of Pittsburgh inevitably, whenever they visit other places, will embarrass you by ordering Boilermakers and saying stuff like Ewans. Well, actually they probably will. Me knowing what I know about the city of Pittsburgh. Many Americans believe that a song is good just so long as it has a good beat and you can dance to it. Americans think that parents always think that the music that their children like to listen to is little more than infernal racket, and that, in fact, the kids just pretend to like it in order to bug the oldsters. Well, gee, I don't know. Americans think, a great many of them anyway, those who care, that there is actually a chance that Elvis might still be alive. Never mind the fact that he was buried and whatnot. Maybe he's one of the walking dead down in Haiti. Who knows? Now there is an Elvis impersonator act, Zombie Elvis. What could be more perfect? America's morbid fascination with the supernatural combined with its most beloved singing star. Of course, that might be a more apt description for Frank Sinatra at this stage. God bless him. Americans believe that talking about the weather is an excellent icebreaker, especially if a gigantic glacier has just enveloped your town. Americans think that there is no need to learn a foreign language or even how to write and spell your own language, because someday computers will do all of that for us. Have you ever seen a spell check program? Do you realize just how many misspellings and typos are perpetuated by flawed spell check programs? A great many, let me assure you. You see, because they're not smart like us. They can't tell when something just isn't right somehow. They're computers, they're machines. Okay, so a computer beat Garry Kasparov, the world chess champion. So what? That doesn't mean they're smarter than us. It just means they're more efficient, that's all. Americans believe that men who wear bow ties and smoke pipes are blowhards, that using big words and foreign expressions in a conversation is a sure sign of worldly sophistication. Habla Espanol. That your average toothless shopping cart man on any city street you might care to name probably makes more money than you do, all tax-free, which he undoubtedly secretes in a bulging mattress. Americans believe that a man who doesn't talk very much is probably very wise, because still waters run deep. Well, hey, you know, plenty of outhouses you could say that about too. Americans believe that high society is actually quite boring, and that you're bound to have a better time if you stick to your own kind. Yeah, that's the way to get an education. Stick to your own kind. Yeah, that's it. Hang on for dear life, because you ain't going nowhere, buddy. Americans believe that it's not the heat, but the humidity. Have you ever semiotically analyzed this phraseology? What is this? All of a sudden, 120 million Americans are amateur weathermen? Yes, actually, it is the humidity which makes you seem to be hot, when in fact it is below freezing. Americans believe that in the 18th and 19th centuries, thousands of people died each summer because of the lack of air conditioning. Americans believe that the super rich are always incredibly stingy misers who will spend half an hour haggling over a 5-cent differential. Americans believe that many teenage fashions are created totally by accident, as when, for example, one's mother says, "So what if your socks don't match? Maybe that will create a fad." Americans believe that any sports fan could probably do the job better than any baseball umpire. Americans believe that argumentative types make good lawyers, talk show hosts, politicians, or possibly all three. Americans believe that the Electoral College is some sort of learned assemblage, that radio talk show hosts have their fingers on the pulse of America and are therefore very, very wise, that a politician will always lose his bid for re-election if he fails to keep in touch with what the electorate wants. Americans believe that winners never quit. Of course, there'd be an awful lot of dead winners out there if that were the case. Americans believe that politicians must memorize reams of dull statistics and have the facts ever at their fingertips, or else the shrewd electorate will catch them out as ignoramuses and deny them an 18th term. Americans believe that the corrupt machine politics of yore were by far the best form of government ever, and all of us would be so much more better off if corrupt machine politics were to make a comeback. Americans believe that there really isn't an awful lot of difference between Democrats and Republicans in that one should vote the man and not the party. Americans believe that every complicated problem has a ridiculously straight, simple, and straightforward answer if only we were enlightened enough to see it. You know, it's the old nuke 'em all and let God sort 'em out theory, newly named and formulated by the wrong hero, rebel without applause. Some more quaint beliefs of these people who call themselves Americans, even though they only occupy at best 1/3 of the North and South American continents. That Masons can get away with murder because all judges are Masons, and they make this secret sign and they let the guy wiggle off the hook if he's a Mason. That all men are created equal, but the talented ones always wind up on top. Americans believe that their comic strips are funny, that comedians are always cheerful and witty, that there's no such thing as an original joke. Now we're getting to some more controversial matters in the closing moments. That Orientals are always insufferably polite. That an inability to speak flawless English is an infallible sign of a crucial lack of intelligence. That all homosexuals wear earrings and vice versa. That gay men invariably have a brightly colored handkerchief sticking out of their back pockets, which they would like very much for you to pull out for them, and that gays delight in converting straight males into deviants. Americans believe that fat people are invariably happy, and that a fat baby is always a healthy one. Americans think that no one in America ever goes hungry, except of course for those 40 million morbidly obese people who are constantly dieting in a futile attempt to alter their metabolisms and become thin and glamorous and slender like so many of the role models which are presented for their edification on the media virtually 24 hours a day. Americans believe that carbonated beverages quench your thirst much better than plain old tap water. Americans believe that if it says low fat on the label, that means you can eat twice as much of it and gain nary an ounce. Americans think that if you find a bug in a can of pork and beans, you can write to the manufacturer and get a free case of this stuff. Now, if you find a bug in this stuff, then why on earth would you want a case of it, right? I mean, what? Are you into eating bugs or what? I've never been able to figure this out. Hi, I'm the wrong hero. Rebel without applause. And it looks to me as though we're winding down. And so, in the remaining moments of my presentation, I would like simply to state a few more of the quaint beliefs of you folks that call yourselves Americans. Now, you may think it presumptuous of me to presume to tell you what you believe. So let us say instead that these are merely some of the quaint beliefs of a goodly portion of Americans. God forbid that a satirist should actually mock and defile things which many people consider sacred and deliberately set out to offend somebody. That might be the old way of doing satire, but that stuff doesn't wash anymore. It's all market share now, see? If you don't get the market share, forget it. You're washed up. You're a has-been. You're a never-wasn't. You're just taking up space. Americans believe that fresh vegetables are basically rabbit food. That tomato juice will get rid of a skunk smell. Well, yeah, kind of. But if your dog gets sprayed by a skunk, you're going to need maybe 500 gallons of tomato juice to get the smell off him. Or maybe just shave his hair off, you know. Unless he's one of those hairless dogs, then you're in trouble. Americans believe that beer in clear bottles gets a skunky taste more quickly than beer in green or brown bottles. Well, Americans, try this simple test. Get yourself a case of beer in brown bottles and just leave it in the hot sun all day, and then get yourself a case of beer in green bottles and put it in the refrigerator and see which one gets that skunky smell first. Hey, you know, when you think about it, most beer isn't really worth drinking. Americans believe that drinking coffee on an empty stomach will eat a hole in your stomach. My mother would tell me not to drink Pepsi-Cola for breakfast because it would eat a hole in my stomach. But of course, I noticed that she drank it on an empty stomach and didn't have little streams of gruesome Pepsi streaming out of her belly. Americans believe that if you swallow chewing gum, the consequences will be dire. Americans believe that persons of African American descent, to a man, like expensive clothing and promiscuous sex. Well, if that's the case, then perhaps they are more like Americans than many Americans give them credit. I know I'm on extremely fragile ground here. Well, and now the grand finale. Americans believe that if you travel across the entire United States and back, you will always have an incalculable advantage over the gink who only made it to Denver. Americans believe that the dullest New Yorker is infinitely better equipped to survive the mean streets of Manhattan than even the quick-wittedest outlander. Americans believe that cavemen and dinosaurs walked the earth simultaneously. Americans believe that everybody has one interesting book or exciting film in him or her, if only there were a way to get him or her to actually sit down and do the incredibly difficult work of putting it all down on paper or film. Americans believe that there is such a thing as a surefire cure for the hiccups, that in a pinch, folk remedies are better than none. Is your baby having teething pains? Put chewing tobacco between his toes. That'll soothe him. Americans believe that dropping a book takes 10 years off of its life. So, if you drop it 100 times, you'll have the oldest book in existence, I guess. Americans believe that people who always look on the bright side never so much as catch a cold. Americans think that hairy people are less evolved and more brutal and beast-like, and these are lies. And I will rip their hearts out and devour them if they continue to repeat these vile fabrications. Americans, Americans believe that common sense is infinitely more valuable than intelligence. And perhaps most dishearteningly of all these beliefs, Americans believe that there are no new philosophical questions to be decided. I'm the wrong hero. Men call me rebel without applause. I hope you enjoyed my presentation of strange beliefs of the Americans, an adventure in cultural anthropology, or loose cannon proselytizing, if you will. Next week, The Wrong Hero will present his final feature-length film of the year, entitled Loathed by Millions. You're tuned to Cafe Cabaret. This segment has been sponsored by the Middle East Cafe at 472 Massachusetts Avenue in Central Square in Cambridge, which brings you a veritable plethora of incredibly wonderful musical offerings. But of course, you've lived in Cambridge long enough to get cable, so you know that. I'm the wrong hero. Good night. And please remember that Cafe Cabaret is telecast every Monday at 9 p.m. on Cambridge Community Television, Channel 66 in Cambridge.